Greetings, I'm Dr. Carl Nath, the Editor-in-Chief of Mayo Clinic Proceedings, and I am pleased to welcome you to the multimedia summary for the journal's February 2021 issue. There are 3 articles, one of which focuses on COVID-19, that have been selected as our Editor's Choice or Highlights articles this month. Our Editor's Choice this month is a review article on COVID-19 and individualized medicine entitled COVID-19, Understanding Inter-Individual Variability and Implications for Precision Medicine. It is authored by Dr. Naveen Pereira from Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and colleagues at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and from several national universities. Individual responses to SARS-CoV-2 infection vary widely, ranging from an entirely asymptomatic state to the fulminant appearance of COVID-19 and attendant fatality. Since the pandemic began, it became apparent that the risk of developing COVID-19 and the severity of the ensuing disease may be influenced by individual characteristics and behaviors, coexisting diseases, immune status, socioeconomic factors, and disparities in healthcare. Yet it is also recognized that individuals who seem prone to developing COVID-19 and exhibiting a progressive course may not do so, whereas others who appear relatively risk-free may contract and succumb to the disease. In the present issue of Mayo Clinic Proceedings, Pereira et al. Provide a comprehensive and discerning overview of the heterogeneity in the susceptibility to and severity of COVID-19, beginning with discussions of sex differences in COVID-19 and characteristics of those with severe, milder, or no disease. Notable findings as regards the latter include the fact that asymptomatic individuals or those in the pre-symptom phase can readily transmit the disease because of abundant viral RNA in their upper airway secretions and, as compared with symptomatic individuals, may have a more protracted viral shedding and less vigorous immune responses. Differences in COVID-19 cause mortality that occur among states in the United States may reflect, in part, differences in race and ethnicity, socioeconomic factors, and healthcare disparities. Differences in mortality among countries may reflect, in part, genetic differences. Because of such differences, for example, East Asian populations compared with European populations may have high expression of ACE2, the cell surface receptor which enables viral entry into cells. Genetic variation may influence the manifestations of COVID-19 in other ways. For example, variants in the ACE2 gene may diminish the efficacy of ACE2 in serving as a receptor for viral cell entry, and certain single nucleotide polymorphisms may influence the TMPRSS2 gene, TMPRSS gene expression, and its protease activity in priming the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2, such priming being a necessary first step before SARS-CoV-2 engages the ACE receptor. Disease outcomes may also be influenced by specific ABO groups, HLA antigens, and ancestral haplotypes. The propensity for greater severity of COVID-19 in males as compared with females provides a salient example of the involvement of multiple mechanisms. Males exhibit higher ACE2 levels, which possibly reflects the fact that the ACE2 gene resides on the X chromosomes. Males lack the anti-inflammatory and cytoprotective effects of estrogens, and male sex hormones are potent inducers of the TMPRSS gene. Additionally, females exhibit higher expression of TLR7, a receptor that recognizes viral RNA, after which increased production of interferon ensues. Interferon constitutes a major early defense against viral infection. Disease outcomes are determined not only by characteristics of the host, but also of the virus itself. For example, the D614G variant of the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2 promotes viral transmission. After these in-depth discussions, Pereira et al. Then delineate how understanding the heterogeneity of COVID-19 may advance clinical management in at least 3 ways. First, understanding the clinical and biochemical determinants of the severity of COVID-19 can lead to the development of risk prediction models, which may aid in assessing which patients may be prioritized for vaccination, may require hospitalization and/or admission to the intensive care unit, may respond to specific therapies, and may be appropriately recruited for clinical trials. That is, providing the right drug to the right patient such that the responses to a given drug and outcomes can be meaningfully evaluated. Second, heterogeneity of responses also pertain to COVID-19 antibody testing, in that patients with severe disease develop higher levels of antibodies, whereas patients with milder disease become seronegative sooner in the recovery phase or indeed never exhibit seroconversion. Vaccine development is the third clinical area influenced by disease heterogeneity. Immune responses to SARS-CoV-2 include activation and proliferation of B and T cell subsets, and elucidating which particular subsets foil the disease are relevant to the development of vaccines, indeed as well as novel therapies. There is considerable variation in immune responses, and this challenges vaccine development because of less immune responsivity in some individuals and thus less benefit from vaccination and the possibility of disease enhancement in others. In concluding their review, Pereira et al. Emphasized the need to incorporate in the electronic health record predictive tools that call attention to the high-risk patient, the potential of artificial intelligence, digital platforms, and sensor technology in meeting the challenges arising from heterogeneity of COVID-19, and the need for studies of genetic factors that underlies disease heterogeneity. Pereira et al. Are to be commended for providing this masterful and timely analysis of a critical and challenging aspect of COVID-19. Our first highlight this month is an original article on adverse effects of inactivity and low fitness on population health, entitled Physical Activity, Cardiorespiratory Fitness, and Population Attributable Risk. It is authored by Dr. Jonathan Myers from the Veterans Affairs Palo Alto Healthcare System and Stanford University in Stanford, California, and colleagues from the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Washington, D.C., and Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Abundant literature supports the view that low cardiorespiratory fitness and physical inactivity significantly increase mortality from cardiovascular and other diseases. This has led to the guideline that individuals should engage in at least 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity aerobic activity, a recommendation followed by only a minority of the US population. In the present issue of Mayo Clinic Proceedings, Myers et al. Address the adverse impact of physical inactivity and low cardiorespiratory fitness on mortality in a population of 5,890 male subjects who between 1992 and 2014 underwent clinical evaluation, including with maximal exercise testing. Low cardiorespiratory fitness was defined as less than 5 METs, and physical inactivity was defined as less than 150 minutes of moderate physical activity per week. To evaluate outcomes at a population level, the authors determined the population attributable risk and exposure impact number. As specifically applied to this study, and as stated by the authors, the population attributable risk is the number of deaths that would not occur if physical inactivity or low cardiorespiratory fitness were removed as risk factors. while the exposure impact number is the number of subjects removed from the low cardiorespiratory fitness or inactive categories necessary to eliminate one death. These indices reflect the fact that the higher the population attributable risk, the greater the adverse effect of the risk factor, while the lower the exposure impact number, the greater the adverse effect of the risk factor. The data in this study demonstrate that a low cardiorespiratory fitness was associated with substantial increases in mortality, and mortality decreased as higher METs were achieved. Mortality was also increased in those with low physical activity, with a twofold higher risk in the least active as compared with the most active individuals. Remarkably, population attributable risk was highest in individuals with low cardiorespiratory fitness when compared with other risk factors such as hypertension, physical inactivity, smoking, and diabetes. Exposure impact number was the lowest in individuals with low cardiorespiratory fitness when compared with diabetes, smoking, hypertension, and physical inactivity. The population attributable risk for low cardiorespiratory fitness tripled that for diabetes, and the exposure impact number for low cardiorespiratory fitness was 1/5 of that exhibited for hypertension. These findings are important from the standpoint of individual patient care as they emphasize the need for enhanced physical activity and cardiorespiratory fitness in improving health and decreasing mortality. As highlighted by the authors, these findings are especially important from the perspective of public health policy. Some $50 billion are spent annually in the management of hypertension in the United States and vastly more in the management of diabetes. Healthcare counseling and policies designed to improve physical activity and cardiorespiratory fitness would substantively improve the health of individuals and the population at large, all of which may be achieved at only a fraction of the costs entailed in the management of diabetes and hypertension. Our second highlight this month is an original article on female sex, age, and acute myocardial infarction entitled Age-Stratified Sex-Related Differences in the Incidence, Management, and Outcomes of Acute Myocardial Infarction. It is authored by Dr. Mohammed Al-Khouly at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and colleagues from the University of Kentucky in Lexington, Kentucky, Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, Baylor College of Medicine, and the Michael E. DeBakey VA Medical Center in Houston, Texas, and West Virginia University in Morgantown, West Virginia. As is true for so many diseases, the incidence and outcomes of acute myocardial infarction exhibit sex-based and age-related differences. However, whether age per se may modulate these sex-related outcomes for this disease has been examined by very few, if any, studies involving large numbers of patients. In the present issue of Mayo Clinic Proceedings, Al-Khouly et al. Used a national inpatient sample to identify more than 6,700,000 hospitalizations for acute myocardial infarction between 2003 and 2015. Analyses of the incidence, management, and outcomes of acute myocardial infarction, both STEMI and non-STEMI, in men and women were undertaken in 4 age ranges, namely less than 45, 45 to 64, 65 to 84, and older than 85 years of age. The major findings of Al-Khouly et al. Were that across all age ranges, women as compared with men exhibited a lower incidence of acute myocardial infarction, were less likely to undergo coronary angiography, percutaneous coronary intervention, or coronary artery bypass grafting for non-STEMI, and less likely to undergo coronary angiography or percutaneous coronary intervention for STEMI, and were less likely for either subtype of acute myocardial infarction to receive mechanical circulatory support. Notably, women as compared with men exhibited a higher mortality and a higher incidence of major post-MI complications in the young and middle age range. And in the older age ranges, women exhibited generally better outcomes than men. The finding that women receive less invasive management as compared with men has been observed previously in the literature, and possible explanations, as discussed by Al-Khoury et al., may include the fact that acute myocardial infarction presentations may be different or delayed in women. There may be greater acceptance for more conservative care, and invasive management, for whatever reason, may be less efficacious in women. The strengths of this study by Al-Khoury et al. Are many, including the size of the population analyzed, the rigor of the analysis, its underscoring of the sex-based disparity in interventional management of acute myocardial infarction, and that age is a critical modulator of sex-related differences, as evidenced by the higher mortality and worse outcomes when occurring in young and middle-aged women. You can access these highlights and editor's choice articles free of charge during the entire month of February when you visit our Mayo Clinic Proceedings website at www.mayoclinicproceedings.org. You'll find links to our social media by clicking the buttons at the top of the home page to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. On our YouTube channel, you'll find full-length author interviews called Insights, 60 seconds video article synopses, and our Mayo Clinic Proceedings issue summary and Author Insights podcast recordings, which are available from our website on the home page as well as through iTunes. You'll also find our online-only feature, Pioneers and Legends in Medicine, which are video interviews of people who have made a strong impact in their field of study. You will see many news stories on our website that are based on articles published in Mayo Clinic Proceedings. And finally, you will see other free content and articles published online ahead of print. As always, we thank you greatly for your interest in and support of Mayo Clinic Proceedings. We hope you found this presentation from the content of our website valuable. Our journal's mission is to promote the best interests of patients by advancing the knowledge and professionalism of the physician community. If you are interested in more information about us, our homepage is www.mayoclinicproceedings.org. There you'll find access to information for our social media content, such as additional videos on our YouTube channel or journal updates on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter. More information about healthcare at Mayo Clinic is available at www.mayoclinic.org. This video content is copyrighted by Mayo Foundation for Medical Education and Research.